Hey, how you doing, everybody? This is the Blue Chip Podcast by fans for fans. This is your host, Cody Potter. How y'all doing? I'm going to do the Week 5 preview between the Chargers and the Commanders. We got a lot to talk about today. There's it's gonna be a good week, man. We gotta get back on track, man. We lost to the Falcons. We got their best go. I'm sure a lot of people were, thinking we need to make a trade and all these things. A lot of times what I try to do is just try to settle things down, man. The Chargers, they're seventh ranked overall in offense, eighth defense. Very good. They got a very good running back in the draft this year in Demarion Hampton. They got Justin Herbert. He's paid his dues. Jim Harbaugh. This is a very well coached team. He's brought a physical element to this team. I think in 2 years. Same thing with Dan Quinn coming in the same year. I think there's a physical identity that both of these teams want. Man, it's being tough in the trenches, especially in the middle. They got rid of Joey Bosa. They still got Khalil Mack, who's injured for this game. Sorry for them. They don't have Rashawn Slater or Joe Alt for this game. Both of their highly invested tackles are going to be out of this game, but they're still a physical football team up front, man. They're going to want to kind of make amends after a tough loss to the Giants. Jackson Dart week 1, it's hard to game plan for a quarterback that you haven't, seen yet. You can't go off of college. You can't really go off of NFL. You just kind of try to scheme it up. They traveled across the country, lost to the Giants. We traveled down to Atlanta, and we lost to the Falcons. So I think both teams are looking to have a bounce-back game. Both teams do not want to be, they don't want another loss in the column. If we were to win, we'd be 3-2. That would match their record if they were to lose this game. But going to California, it's going to be tough. Jaden Daniels will be back. The story for the Commanders this year really is, the injury report, man. Like you look at the team. Javonte Jean-Baptiste now out for the year. Dorrance Armstrong questionable. Terry McLaurin questionable, probably not going to play. Like I said, I've mentioned some of the injuries on their team with Khalil Mack and Joe Alt and their left tackle. Anyway, this is Rashawn Slater. So either way, that there's injuries on both teams. It's the NFL. The first quarter of the season, man, you're trying to get everybody in action. When you have, you're trying to get continuity going on. But when you have the injuries that this team has had, the injuries that they've had, it's next man up, and that's what it's got to be. Deebo Samuel has a little heel injury. I'm pretty sure he will play. Deatrich Wise is on IR. He was a very impact player on the edge for Washington. Same with Javonte Jean-Baptiste. He started to show some things. He was a draft pick from last year. Everybody wants to get rid of Marshawn Lattimore right now, but dude, realistically, man, you're not gonna upgrade these positions. And then people want us to trade for a wide receiver. They were talking about Tyreek Hill before the injury. Prayers up to him for the healing process. Dislocating your knee and tearing multiple ligaments, man, it's going to be a hell of a way back. It's probably going to take over a year, so he's probably not going to play next year either. But the biggest thing that I try to always get through to a lot of fans and things like that is what is the where is your team at? We're year 2, and when you go to an NFC Championship game, you lose to the Eagles. You have all the excitement of Jaden Daniels being a rookie. Well, this year, things have kind of leveled off. They've kind of plateaued. He got hurt in the Green Bay game late. Doing what he does, and you don't want to stop Jaden Daniels from doing what he does. What makes him great is his legs and things like that dynamic, and you do want him to not put himself in harm's way as much as he is, but realistically, the way that he got hit, it was kind of freak injury. But we're going to have to step up, man. It's next man up. It truly is. The one thing that Washington has been able to do this year when they've committed to it is run the football. Whether it be Austin Eckler, whether it be Bill Merritt, or whether it be Chris Rodriguez, or whether it be everybody, anybody else. By committee, the Washington Commanders are the number 2 team rushing the football. And that's really what you're going to have to get into. The Chargers do have a pretty good run defense, man, so it's going to be strength on strength. They're going to want to shut the run down, and we're going to want to run the football. I think the biggest thing for Washington is the lapses that you saw against Bijan Robinson coming out of the backfield as a receiver. They did pretty good as in the run game, but as a receiver he torched us. Well, Demarion Hampton is another big physical electric back that can give you a lot of the same things. But this year, man, I said it coming into the year, man, like Debo Samuel, he was always used as that running, dynamic, his running element. We've used him as such, but we've also used him as more of a pass catcher here. We're going to need that to continue, man, because, our injuries at wide receiver have been very well documented with Noah Brown, who's a guy who's always struggled with injury. It was going to be a concern coming into this year, relying on him anyway. So this is a big game for both teams, man. Like the defense needs to settle down. I think you're going to start seeing some more of the young players come in and spell guys. Everybody knows that Bobby Wagner's a little bit older. He's a little bit slower. Yeah, he got chipped, and Bijan went around the corner for about 70 yards on a sweep. And these things happen when you have an older linebacker. You got to be able to have substitutions and have certain packages for certain players. We do need to get faster at the linebacker position. We drafted Kane Madrano. We drafted McGee last year. I think we're going to start seeing more packages where these young guys come in, but they have to be able to show in practice they can handle the responsibilities, whether it is just certain packages that they come in for with certain responsibilities, and that's what they're practicing for. We've seen Ben Sinnott come in. He's a pretty good blocker. He's really excelled in the blocking, department as filling in for John Bates. I think John Bates will be back for this game, which will be a huge lift for our running game. I think the biggest thing is you have Zach Ertz, another older player. You're going to have to start getting this impact from John Bates, or whether it's from Ben Sinnott, or the guys that you're looking to going forward to be your identity long term on this team. Whether it's Colston Yankoff, you need one of these tight ends to start making an impact outside of Zach Ertz in the passing game. Zach Ertz is a safety outlet. He's a comfort zone for Jaden Daniels and for Marcus Mariota, who played very, very well. Didn't have the best passing day against Atlanta, but Atlanta has the best passing defense. So, again, when you go up against a team that like the Chargers, who are going to have a good strength of run defense, everybody wants to see us run the ball and they want to see us control the clock, but we're ultimately going to have to still beat them down the field. What receivers are going to step up? Are we going to see Luke continue to, show development and things like that? I believe we will. I think Luke McCaffrey is starting to find a little comfort zone. The game starts to slow down. That's what you want these rookies on the field for. That's why you want second-year players on the field for, and whether it's certain packages, whether it's certain things, players go down. And as we've talked about since, training camp, like, guys get hurt in the NFL. Last year, we were relatively healthy. We stayed healthy all year long. Very few key injuries as the year went along last year. Sam Cosmi went all the way to our last game against, Detroit. Before we played Philly and lost in the NFC Championship game, he went all that way. But Sam Cosmi is coming back. That should be another anchoring, presence, another veteran that you're leading on, another long-term investment player that we've got locked up for the future. Him and Terry McLaurin are very pivotal to what this team does. And, not having Sam Cosmi at all this year and having Terry McLaurin coming in after not having much camp, the holdout and everything like that, realistically, we were going to kind of start kind of slow. This is a winnable football game. Every week is a winnable football game. We got caught, Atlanta gotten blown out the week before. You got their best matchup. Well, the Chargers got beat the week before, in New York, but they're traveling across the country too. Yes, they might be playing at home, but they are traveling across the country just as we are. The biggest thing you want to do is you want to see this team start to establish its identity. You've got 4 weeks of tape. You've got the players in there. You've seen the mistakes that are constantly leading up. How did the coaches adjust to this? How do we start making, adjustments? Because last year, after the quarter mark of the season, while we did have a better record, you saw better things from this team. You saw Jaden Daniels elevating this roster. Coming off injury, with Jaden Daniels with the knee, whether he's going to play with a knee brace or things like that, we're going to have to see, what level of running impact he's going to have. Realistically, I think you're going to see him playing from more from the pocket, and he is very capable of doing this. But this is where you got to see guys step up. This is where the Jalen Lanes, the draft pick, you drafted this guy in the third round, or the fourth round. You drafted, Luke McCaffrey at the end of the third round in his draft class with Mikey Sainristil and Ben Sinnott. These are all guys that you need to start elevating their game. Mikey Sainristil is a guy that, while he People are saying he's having a down year. And yes, I mean, you maybe can say he is because he's playing back inside. He played outside last year and did very well at it. That's an adjustment. Moving inside, playing inside is the hardest position to do. And I would tell you that when I'm watching this team, when I go back and watch the tape, I just see very, very big communication lapses. Last year, I felt like the back end of our team with Jeremy Chin, he played his role. Last year with Quan Martin, communication, he played his role and everything was more sound and it looked a lot better. That's where you're seeing the lapses this year. Everybody wants to talk about Marshawn Lattimore. Yes, he gives up a couple of plays. He does. It is what it is. Every cornerback is going to get beat. But Marshawn Lattimore is going up against the number ones. And I mean, that's going to happen when you go up against the number one wide receivers, man. These guys make hella money, that's what he does. That's what they get paid to do, and that's what they're going to do. And offensive coordinators, they scheme certain things up. First 4 weeks of the year, I expect Marshawn Lattimore to play better. If he doesn't, then maybe you start considering some things. But as far as trading in season, honestly, at this point, people are talking about trading 4 players. If it was up to me, I would be trying to recoup assets for this next draft class. I would not be giving up assets to get another aging veteran. Everybody was, like I said, talking about Tyreek Hill, or they're talking about this player, trading for that player. One, it's hard for a player to come off of another team's roster with another system. One, just to learn the verbiage to come in here and make an impact and be in the right place for the quarterback. There's no chemistry. There's no nothing. So everybody's playing from behind. So a wide receiver addition at this juncture would be very, very hard. And cornerback is a hard position just to play when you have multiple years in a system. And like from year to year, it's so hard based off of teams that you go up against and schematically and player skill sets. You have no idea what you're going to get from a cornerback if you were go and try to trade or add one or get rid of Marshawn Lattimore and then have Noah come in. Noah I has always had an issue tackling. He's always, giving up yards, giving up catches. So, I mean, people talk about moving Mikey back outside and then putting Noah in the slot. I don't think Noah's going to play any better. I think he's going to play worse than what Mikey Samerstill has given us so far from inside. And Mikey Samerstill had a pick. I think he's going to start getting more comfortable. But the communication is new to these guys. This is a whole new team. It's a whole new year. Every year is like this. So, I mean, in the NFL, it takes time to get going. That's not to say that this team can't make another run like they made last year. Do I think they're going to the NFC Championship? No, but I didn't think that at this point last year. Even when the record was better, even with a weaker schedule. And having a harder schedule, it only refines you to be better, or it really levels you off and shows you what you are as a team. Against the teams that we should have beaten, we've beaten them, and we've looked dominant in those games. And then in the games where, a team came out and they had something to prove, they kind of had their way with this defense. So, I mean, you're seeing the defense play at a level where they need to win games, but you've also seen them have letdown games. And, I mean, after the quarter point of the season, you would hope as a coaching staff they can identify the things that are happening that are causing these things to get the players in a better position to make a better impact going forward so these lapses don't continue to happen. Now that they're on tape, now that they've happened multiple times, certain packages, certain adjustments, certain players coming in certain packages to maybe prevent these things, you're going to have to start tinkering with it. Also developing the players behind the starters that are ultimately going to be long-term players on this team, whether they are just special teamers, whether they are just rotational pieces. You need to know that going into this offseason, what you have. This draft coming up is going to be very pivotal. That's why I do so much work with the college football. It's why I do a lot of scouting. And, when I'm looking at this draft, I think the strength of this draft really does lend to what Washington needs as a team. But we still have a long way to go before the draft. And there's, a whole another 3 quarters of the season to play. And you have bye weeks. We have a lot of primetime games. And realistically, for what Washington has shown to this point, you have to look at some of these primetime matchups, man. Some of these matchups coming up, like the Chiefs, like the Chargers. You got Philly twice. You got Dallas twice. I mean, there's a lot of matchups coming up throughout the course of the season with some really, really good offenses, some really, really good quarterbacks. And you're like, hey, man, if this is how they're going to play against Green Bay, this is how they're going to play against Michael Penix when he's on and he's, hitting Drake London and hitting his weapons, and Bijan Robinson is tearing it up. This is what you're going to face the rest of the season. So you're going to have to adjust, and you're going to have to do this better. So again, there's multiple things that are going to come of this. We're going to find out what this roster is overall. I mean, realistically, year two with 4 years of bad drafting with Ron Rivera, this is what you get. You get an aging roster, and you have like such a big precedent of having aging players that you have to rely on to play certain roles while you're drafting and developing certain players to hopefully take their spots. And long term, that's what we're trying to do and develop this roster. But because Jaden Daniels and this team went to where they went last year, there's a certain level of expectation to try to get back to that point. And I mean, that's where the role of being a general manager and a coach is so hard, because you're trying to win, because it's a win now league. When you win like you did last year and then you come back this year, you think it's a letdown, but realistically, it's just the roster balancing out against a tougher schedule against better quarterbacks. So again, this defense needs a lot of help. This defense needs a lot of pieces that are added to it long term that are going to be the identity of this defense. Mikey is one, and I believe Quan Martin is one. I think both of these players are playing fine. Are they playing elite? No, but I mean, it's hard to play elite when there's a lot of things going on around them that aren't playing up to the level that, you need to play to compete. I mean, how many years did it take the Bills to get to where they were with Josh Allen and his development? How many years did it take the Chiefs, while they didn't have Patrick Mahomes, to insert Patrick Mahomes to be that team? And then having Patrick Mahomes in there with that offense, while that was carrying it, they were drafting defense after defense after defense, and that took years for that defense to get to where it is. So nothing is overnight, nothing is a quick fix. People talk about Philly, they trade for this superstar and then they draft all these superstars. Well, that's a collection of having a ton of draft capital that they got for Carson Wentz, using those assets, spreading them out year after year, trading back in the draft, and acquiring more future draft capital. I mean, so realistically, to have that deep of a roster, to have that young of a roster with all the collection of players that they have, plus the superstars that Howie Roseman acquired, that was years of drafting and developing. And people wanted to get rid of Jalen Hurts for 5 years before he blew up, So I mean, and that was after the A.J. Brown addition and the Devontae Smith, player, pick panning out. So again, man. And Saquon Barkley coming in there. So I mean, again, it's knowing where you are and then making the moves to best suit your team for where they are in their development. We are year two in this. We have a bright quarterback. You need to keep him healthy. That's what all the offensive line additions were. You made some draft picks, at the wide receiver position to hopefully have an impact in whatever role you saw them in. I think Luke McCaffrey's size, I think his speed is good enough. I think he's going to be an impact player for this team going forward. He's starting to show these things. He's starting to scratch the surface. 2 touchdowns in 2 weeks, whether one was a garbage time touchdown or not, it was still a big play. He made the play, made the catch. It was what it was. So now you want to start seeing Jalen Lane start to come around, because honestly, if Marcus Mariota makes a better throw in the Atlanta game, that turnover was the turning point in the game. So a lot of people talk about, Atlanta beating us and we didn't look good because they came out hot, and they got ahead on us and then they never gave it back. Well, that's what happens in the NFL. But I will say, if Marcus Mariota hits Jalen Lane, who was actually wide open on that play, just where Marcus Mariota put the ball, he put the ball into coverage. The safety made a really good play. Xavier Watts is a hell of a player, man. He was a hell of a prospect last year, a guy I was much higher on than where his draft stock actually took him to. I thought he was way above being a second, third round player. So again, man, we're gonna see what this team does, but we need to start hitting on those type of players. We need a back end presence on defense. We need front end impact on defense. We need mid level impact on defense that are younger. Frankie Louv is a hell of a player, but I don't want him covering. You want him running and chasing running backs. You want him coming after the quarterback. You want him moving forward. Well, if you're going to have that type of player, you got to have another linebacker that can play the position that he's going away from. You got to have a guy that can cover. That was the addition of Kane Medrano. It's going to take time for Kane Medrano. He was a 5th round draft pick. You don't just get instant reward from most of your draft picks. And honestly, the way a lot of our draft picks played last year, I think there's a certain level of expectation. Like, Mikey Sanders still isn't playing any worse. He's just playing in a different spot, and he's got to re-feel for that spot. He's got to relearn how to communicate with the players around him to be where he needs to be. But same thing for Mikey Sanders, still communicating. Other players need to be where they are, because right now, where you see Mikey Sanders still give up a big play, sometimes that's not even his responsibility. Sometimes that's Jeremy Reeves not having the communication or the reps at safety, giving up a big play. He was supposed to pass him off to Jeremy Reeves. Jeremy Reeves sat with his eyes at the quarterback, and that happens a lot of times. And that was the week before. That was in the Raiders game. So again, man, a lot of these things that you see an individual give up a play. Sometimes it's not even the player that you see giving up the play whose responsibility was supposed to be there. Our back-end safety play is not good on one side, and you can't really expect Quan Martin to make up for both of them when his responsibility is on the other side of the field. So again, it's communication. It's defense being in sync with each other. People are talking about firing Joe Witt. Dude, it's way too early for that. I mean, he doesn't even have the assets put into the defense. While he is showing improvements in certain areas that everybody's been harping about from last year, you see those improvements. Now you see other things lacking and things like that. And the truth is those were holes on this defense last year before teams just knew that they could run the ball and they could get, wear the defense down and control the clock and try to keep the ball away from Jaden Daniels. That's why they ran on us so much this year. This year, they're not running on us. You're starting to see some of the holes that were there last year in the passing game. They're starting to rear their head again because teams can't run on us as effectively as they were running, last year. So now we got to shore up the back end. It's going to take some communication. It's going to take a player stepping up. Do you make a change, at the safety position and maybe, get the young guy in there from Texas Tech? I would like to see it. Is that going to yield any better results? Probably not. Not early, because he's got to develop in that role. Again, man, so there's going to be some changes that I think you're going to start seeing certain players playing in certain packages. How does it impact the team? It could have a good impact. It could have a negative impact. We don't know yet. But a lot of times the negative impact comes from, a player needing to learn a certain key, a certain responsibility, a certain communication, a certain thing to look for pre-snap and post-snap. And until they start taking these lumps, you don't know what they have. So expecting just some kind of quick fix on this defense was never going to happen anyway. You just want to see them start to remedy the situations that they've already showed through this year. And can some of these young players, step up in their development? You want to see some more from Jerzon Newton, another priority pick, early in the second round. There were a lot of good players on that defensively available. Guys like the linebacker that I had talked about from Green Bay, man. He's a really, really good player, coming out of college from South Carolina, went to Green Bay. He's having an immediate impact. Our linebacker positions, kind of struggling. So you look at that and your hindsight is always 20/20, but realistically, we got good players on this team. They're going to develop over time. This might not be an NFC championship year type of run, but just enjoy the year for what it is. It's another year of having a quarterback. We haven't had a quarterback in so long. Let's see Jaden start to develop a chemistry with some of these young players. That's what you need to see. That's what you're looking for moving forward. I'm very excited to see if, Bill gets some more reps. I think he's earning more reps. Every time I see him get the ball, it's 5-6 yards a carry. I think he's deserving of more time. I think he'll be, showing that on the field. I think he's going to earn the coach's trust. Can he be better as a pass blocker? Things like that. I think he will improve with more reps. He clearly cares, things like that. But this team is going to take time. It's just going to take time. We could come out and win this week and everybody's going to be like, oh, everything's better. But realistically, there's still holes in this team. And that's going to show themselves. They're going to show themselves through the course of the year. And that's why Adam Peters, as he's going to watch his team over the course of the year, he's going to make moves over the course of the year, like adding Robbie Chosen. That's not going to remedy much from the wide receiver position, but we need bodies. We keep getting injured at that spot. So again, wide receiver is going to be a spot that I'm sure we're going to look at in the offseason. Defensive back is going to be a position that we're going to look at in the offseason. Linebacker, I'm sure, is going to be a position we're going to look at in the offseason. You're looking to improve this team in multiple ways through free agency, through everything, but you got to have the value meet the impact. And then not only does the value meet the impact for free agency, the player has to want to come sign here for the deal that we're offering. So again, man, it's a lot of things that go into improving a roster overall. We do have cap space. We have veterans that we're going to have to re-sign. Deebo Samuel, you're looking at the way he's impacting this team. You're going to re-sign this guy for the way he's playing. You're going to reward him for that. So again, now paying Terry $30 million a year, on average, depending on how, we all know how the contract is actually structured and things like that. There's a lot of incentives to make it like that. But, again, that's a high impact, that's a high cap, impact that you have at the wide receiver position. So paying Deebo Samuel as a wide receiver, it's going to be another high cap number. So, outside of that, you can't keep going out and paying these veterans. So you're going to have to replace wide receiver impact through the draft. It's going to continue to be the Luke McCaffreys, the Jalen Lanes, and things like that. Would you go out and make a first round pick in this class the way that I'm seeing it, outside of, Boston or maybe a few guys? I don't know if that's the way to go when you're going to be staring at maybe potentially like a Whit Weeks or, like a Kendrick Falk from like Auburn. One of those edge rushers, you're probably going to lean there because that's a bigger need on the team and it's a bigger position of, it's a bigger position of importance. Having that player on a rookie deal will be more impactful for this team. Probably going wide receiver later in the draft, but we are limited in draft capital because of the Deebo Samuel edition, because of the Laramie Tunsil edition. You keep trading, valuable draft assets for veterans. While I am very okay with that because we needed to supplement this roster and improve for this year overall. And I feel like we have at those positions because these players are making an impact. Long term, we're still going to need more draft capital to infuse, talent around the rest of this roster. So again, this is kind of like my Chargers. It's kind of what I wanted to say about the state of this team moving forward. I gave you a little bit of the Chargers preview. I think it's going to be a really good game. I think the team is going to settle down. They're going to fix some of the things that have been haunting them through the early part of this season. What happens in this game, I don't know. I mean, it's two very good, very physical football teams, man. Both teams are dealing with injuries. Both teams have very, very good quarterbacks that are good in their own right. Quentin Johnston has developed for that team. That was a wide receiver pick that took 2-3 years to just in its own right just to develop. And he's playing good football. Can we shut him down? Can we be impactful? They got Keenan Allen, a very savvy veteran. You look around that wide receiver room, man, they got 3 guys that can make impacts, and we got 3 guys that we need to be able to match up with this team. Ladd McConkey is going to be a well-balanced breakfast for Mikey Sainristil. Whether we put Marshawn Lattimore on Keenan Allen or whether we put Amos on, Keenan Allen or, dude, that vet is going to be playing either against a young player or a savvy vet in its own right. So how do you want to match this up for this week? We usually typically play sides. So, both guys are going to see each. Quentin Johnston is going to play against Amos. Quentin Johnston is going to play against Marshawn Lattimore. They're going to deploy that based on what they think is the best for that team. We're going to have to counteract it. And then, again, Marion Hampton's a really, really good running back player, man. He's a guy that I liked in North Carolina. Very fast, very big. Not the most, dynamic cutting guy, but, runs with good power, runs behind his pads. He's got a very good center of gravity, can make plays after contact, can catch the ball out of the backfield, and he can catch the ball down the field, similarly to Bijan Robinson. So he's a very dynamic weapon in his own right. And Justin Herbert is a very, very, very good quarterback, man. He's a very good player. So, this is going to be a very tough game, man. But this is my Chargers Commanders preview. I'm going to get some college takeaways from last week. I'm going to kind of blend it with my look forward to week 6 because it's already Thursday. I'll get that to you guys tomorrow. Thank you guys for checking out the Blue Chip Podcast by Fans for Fans. It's your host, Cody Potter. Again, have a blessed